What's up, guys? The CPI data just released, and I want to go over all of that with you and then see how the markets and the big news is reacting to this information. But first, if you enjoy this video at all, if you think this is whatsoever helpful, please subscribe right now because that would really help me out a whole bunch, and I'm trying to reach 1,000 as fast as possible. So please help me out in reaching that goal. But let's get right into this information. The CPI released this morning at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. So right here is the U.S. Bureau's website of labor statistics. And if you want to find this information yourself, I'll link this in the description. And this is the report, the Consumer Price Index of April, that was just released this morning. And I want to take a quick look at this with you. Yesterday, I released a video of expectations for this CPI release, and we have a slight miss on those expectations. And we're going to talk about how the markets are reacting to this slight miss very soon. Right here is the overall CPI. This is your headline inflation. We were expecting 8.1%, but we're seeing about 8.3% annually, seasonally adjusted inflation. So that's a 0.2% miss on headline inflation. One other thing that I want y'all to look at, what I mentioned in yesterday's video, is the core index inflation. The core index excludes food and energy because those are more volatile markets. And right now, the Russia-Ukraine crisis is making food and energy much more expensive and increase at a very sharp rate. So the core index looks at all the stocks minus the volatility that the Fed has no control over. So right here, I wanted y'all to look at this. Last month, we had a 0.3% increase in the U.S. core inflation, but this month we saw a 0.6% increase. So that's actually a monthly speed increase of inflation between March and April. So both of those are kind of bad news compared to what we were expecting and what we're getting. But there is some good news in this information. There's one thing that I want to point out. The monthly rate increase in April, just in April, is 0.3% over all goods and services. So that's compared to last month's 1.2%. There's actually a really nice chart right here that the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics made. You can see last month's March, 1.2% inflation, and this month in April, we had a 0.3% inflation rate. That's the slowest month-over-month inflation that we've seen since last year in August. So that's a relatively good sign amongst all of the bad signs that we've been seeing. But before you tune out, let's go ahead and check out how people are reacting to this information. Right here, I have pulled up a Wall Street Journal article that they released right when this information released. And the headline is right here: U.S. inflation eased in April to 8.3% annual rate. I find this interesting because they're kind of taking a positive tone. Eased seems like a very positive verb. So it's going down from last month, 8.5 headline inflation, to now 8.3 headline inflation, even though it's a miss. So the Wall Street Journal seems to be taking a relatively positive tone, and some things that they touch on is how last month it's down from last month, 8.5%. And they also talk about the core inflation right here and how last month we saw a 0.3% gain versus the 0.6% gain that we saw this month in April. So they're mentioning a lot of the same stuff that we just covered straight from the CPI release. But there's one other thing I want y'all to look at the Wall Street Journal has here. They took the core inflation and annualized it over a 12-month basis. So last month, in last month's release in March, March had a 6.5% increase of core inflation. So that's minus food and minus energy. But this month, annualized, we have a 6.2% increase in inflation. Now, these are relatively still high numbers, but that means that core inflation decreased by 0.3% annualized, and also headline inflation decreased by 0.2% from 8.5 to 8.3. So that doesn't mean that we're getting the decrease that we wanted, that Wall Street expected, but that does mean that there is signs of a slope down, maybe a peak of inflation. So not all things are bad, but definitely not what we wanted, not the best case scenario. So let's check how the actual markets are reacting to this. In the pre-markets, you can see right here 6:30. It released at 7:30 because I'm Central Time Zone. We had great expectations going into this. We were hoping for that 8.1%, and the market was up. They were excited. They were hoping that the CPI was going to show great information, but you can see right here that right when 7:30 hit and those numbers came out, shot straight down. We're like, oh no, the Fed's going to see this information. They're going to do a 3/4 point hike, even though Jerome Powell just said that we're going to have 2 50-point basis hikes coming up next. So straight down all the way to -1% for the S&P 500. But now I think people are getting comfortable with it. They're realizing that, wait, we might still have peaked. Core annualized inflation and regular CPI inflation annualized both are decreasing. So it's not all bad news. Now I think people are starting to realize, since the market's opened, that it could be worse. Let's check out the NASDAQ and see how that's doing also. Or the QQQ. Right here you can see similar trends. Really great expectations going into it, into the release right around 7:30. Big drop down to almost the -2%. That's a change of, almost 3-4%. And since people have started to realize that it's not all bad news, but it's not great, it's kind of evening out, getting around that 0% change. So this is what I wanted y'all to check out. It's going to be a rough market. I would expect about 6 months of pain just because inflation isn't decreasing as fast as the Fed wants. And that could mean more rate hikes of higher than 0.25% coming in our future. So potential recession risks and all types of stuff. It's a rough market. Stay in there, stay strong, buy the dip. If you like this video, please subscribe, and I'll tune in with you next time. Bye.